Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale, our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon. The world's people have spoken. Their message is clear. Time is running out.
The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now is 50% higher than it was in 1900. And not only are we piling in more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but we are chopping down the forests of the earth at a great rate. And the forests themselves are the most efficient consumers of carbon dioxide that there are on Earth. We're going to destroy the ground because the soil of a rainforest isn't very good. We are actually tampering with the climate of the Earth and with the very atmosphere that we breathe. When we talk about the disappearance of the ozone layer, we don't know what will happen when the ozone layer goes. The world has become so fragile that we cannot subject the Earth to the tortures we can now inflict upon it. When we talk about the greenhouse effect, we're talking about something that affects the entire Earth. And these problems are life and death problems. They go to the root of the viability of the planet itself. If there's one thing that is biologically certain about the human species is that it is a human species, one species.
If we don't stop the destruction of our natural world, nothing else will matter. Simply put, if we don't protect nature, we can't protect ourselves.
The only way we can solve a problem is by a human solution. Never can we sit back and wait for miracles to save us. Miracles don't happen. Sweat happens. Efforts happens. Thought happens.
Okay, so climate action plan. What is the purpose of implementing an action plan into place? Well, the purpose is to set up a program to reduce greenhouse emissions, and this is also very similar whether it's an individual, school, business, organization, or government. I also think this is a wise way to analyze the risks and opportunities or the costs and the benefits of each one. As an opportunity, climate mitigation programs improve brand recognitions, takes advantage of growing demand market, motivates employees, and can attract new investors. Actions reduce emissions by reducing energy use or managing transportations, which also lower the cost. The action plan is composed of 4 steps. 1. Make a plan. 2. Measure and prepare a greenhouse gases inventory. 3. Reduce emissions. And 4. Offset any remaining emissions. Next is measure and prepare the plan. Below is a picture of your carbon footprint through emission, electricity, transportation, offset, recycling, waste, gas, and fuel. Measurement, however, refers to measuring your carbon footprint. This allows an organization to set priorities so it can tackle the biggest sources first and reduce its planet heating emissions as much as possible, but as soon as possible as well. There are steps done through the Greenhouse Protocol, and they include establishing an emission boundary, collecting data, calculate, quality control, monitor. The protocol will recognize the standard for reporting and verifying greenhouse gas inventory and monitor greenhouse gas emission reductions and validating and verifying inventory and reduction data. When setting up greenhouse gas inventory, the scope needs to be defined. And this means, will you just attract the direct emissions, which are exhaust from a heating plant or burning fuel during your employee's commute, or will you include the indirect emissions in the products you buy, which could be from a trucking company that delivers the office supplies or carbon releases in the logging the trees used in the paper that you buy as well. Reduce emissions. This is considered to be an exciting part of the climate action plan. This is the how do we identify the projects with the best opportunity to reduce the emissions. There are 2 approaches. The first approach is to find a project that can easily be done and that is at a low cost. The second approach is to begin with a pilot project or an initial small-scale test version. Both are effective, however, not every project will be successful. And doing a pilot project is a way to minimize costs and protect the reputation of the project until a strategy can be proven. The key to a project to reduce emission is the overall visibility and appeal. Do any examples come to mind when you think of this? Well, some examples are the microturbine on the top of the building, such as shown in the picture, or a covering roof with the solar panels, are both projects that attract positive publicity and raise awareness. I think that's an important aspect of this to avoid negative reactions that can threaten a program, and evaluate not only the potential emission reduction but also the financial costs and payback period when choosing the appropriate climate action plan. Offset versus emission trading. An offset is used to bring the total net emissions to zero. Once all possible reduction have been found and implemented and there is still some emission that remains, offsetting is the last step put into place through the climate action plan. Offsets are a way of quantifying an emission reduction created by one enterprise. Offsets are a voluntary payment made to an initiative that reduces the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. An offset can be generated by greenhouse gas reduction activities, such as wind farms and methane captured facilities, solar installations, cogeneration plants, and even some forests. Offsetting is based on the fact that climate change is a global problem. On the other hand, emission trading is also known as a cap trade system, which refers to the buying and selling of permits to pollute, which means that a company that reduces its emissions below the cap can sell its excess emission allowances. A company whose emission remains above the cap can buy emission allowances to make up the difference. The European Union Emissions Trading Scheme is the world's largest system for trading emission allowances. The U.S. and Canada have 3 voluntary regional markets. One is the Western Climate Initiative, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and the Midwestern Greenhouse Gas Reduction Accord. What are some strategies for reducing emissions? Energy use, which is being energy efficient, which is using less energy to do the same amount of work. Transportation accounts for a significant share of the carbon dioxide emissions from burning of fossil fuels. Reducing the single occupancy car vehicles is a primary goal that should be put into a plan. Air travel is also a large source of greenhouse gas emissions, so it's advised to travel by a train or a bus to produce less. Building structures. Opportunities include improving energy efficiency, fuel switching, and converting to renewable energy sources to take advantage of the local climate and its characteristics, such as implementing renewable ways to use the wind and the sun. Operations and purchasing the way that we should change the way we use paper for one, using double-sided printing and copying paper, and we should also use the recycled materials. This, in the end, also is important because it keeps some materials out of the waste streams. Using the farms, forests, and soils is important because forests are carbon sinks. This is where they store the carbon. And we should also reduce deforestation and enforce carbon farming. This is managing the farmlands and restoring organic soil. Biochar is important to soil fertility and creates healthy soils of the ecosystems and increases the ability for the soil to hold water. The biggest role of using biochar is its role in stabilizing climate and separating the carbon. Carbon captures and sequestrations it's a way to capture and remove carbon dioxide from industrial processes. This is an example of geoengineering. One of the carbon strategies that has been planned to capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and move it into the ocean, which already has large amounts of carbon in it. What do you think some problems could happen from this approach? And do you agree or do you disagree? Adapting to the climate change. Are there any examples that you can identify in your own life that indicate a changing climate and that is causing you to adapt to the inevitable? How are we actually adapting? We are doing this through mitigation strategies, lowering greenhouse gas emissions to stabilize the climate, and adapting to the new circumstances that do arise. However, the fact remains that we have inhabited a different planet than it was before, and now we have to figure out how we're going to save it for the future. Due to climate change, the polar ice and mountain glaciers are disappearing. Tropical climates and deserts are advancing. Species are disappearing, sea levels rising, and coral reefs are vanishing. Hurricane, floods, and wildfires are increasing its strengths and frequencies. But I think this even makes us start to think that how maybe the melting of the Arctic ice is also contributing to this rise in the sea level. But then I don't understand why we're not doing anything, and this is where we need to adapt and make a difference so we can limit the effects that climate change actually has. Okay, so we had a class activity, but obviously since this was transferred onto just the remote learning now, we just decided to implement it for you guys to just do it or think about it as you read it. But basically just rank these extreme weather and climate events in terms of the knowledge and the confidence that the scientists have in regarding the relationship due to climate change. So from 1 to 7, just, look at it and consider which ones you think would be the worst, that would have the greatest impact on the climate change, and which ones wouldn't. And then once you click through the end of the slide, it will eventually show you what the answers are. I just thought it was some neat facts to also see that there is also a human impact on climate change, but also all of our natural disasters and our extreme weather do impact the climate as well.